What's going on, everyone? DSP here, and welcome to another edition of the Hateful Truth video game review series. And in this episode, we are going to discuss one of the games that had potential to be, one of the big blockbusters of the year. It's actually a highly anticipated sequel, and possibly the last installment in a PlayStation 3 exclusive series and IP. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, we are talking about Resistance 3 for the PlayStation 3. And what we really have to do here is we have to talk about the campaign and then about the multiplayer separately, because honestly they are quite different, and the two, have to kind of be judged differently and then put together to get a final review score for this game, okay? So Resistance 3. Resistance 3 picks up right after where Resistance 2 left off. Now, this is spoiler alert if you haven't played Resistance 2 yet, but at the end of Resistance 2, the hero of the series, Nathan Hale, has been injected with a chimera virus, per se, and it's giving him all these powers and allowing him to become more powerful throughout the course of Resistance 2. By the end of the game, he's actually been overtaken by this virus and is becoming a chimera, and so he runs into his teammate Joe Capelli. Joe Capelli, unfortunately, is forced to kill Nathan Hale because he knows he's about to turn into a full-blown chimera. Joe Capelli is actually the protagonist of Resistance 3. It picks up in Oklahoma, where he's met up with his family and the people of the Resistance living there, trying to hide from the Chimera. Unfortunately, the Chimera have now taken over most of the world, and the humans are really losing the fight. It's looking pretty bad for them. And so, Resistance 3 is the story of how Joe Capelli decides that he needs to get to New York City after running into the doctor from Resistance 2, and I forget his name. It starts with an M. Molotov. I'm thinking Molotov cocktail, and that's not it. I wonder if it's actually in the instruction booklet. How much you want to bet it's not? How much you want to bet that it doesn't list his name in here? That'd be pretty funny. Nope, it doesn't. I knew it. It lists nothing about the game at all besides the controls in here. But anyway, so he meets up with the doctor, and the doctor has a hint that when Nathan Hale opened up a wormhole at the end of Resistance 2, that wormhole has some significance. And actually, ever since this has opened up in New York City, this wormhole, a cold snap has been going across the world, and the temperature has been going down significantly, to the point where they think there's going to be a world climate change that's going to kill off all the humans. So Joe finally is convinced by the doctor to go to New York and try to destroy the wormhole. And that's pretty much the story of the entire game. There are other characters who he runs into. There's actually a pretty cool side kind of path of the story where he ends up getting kidnapped by a bunch of renegade humans who are actually escaped prisoners who are now running the prison, and he has to escape this prison because they're holding him hostage. So there is some interesting twists and turns. There's some cool boss fights. The epic pieces, if you remember, Resistance 1 and Resistance 2 had some pretty epic pieces in them in the scale of enemies and boss fights and things like that. And you're going to get that kind of thing over the course of the story of Resistance 3. I don't want to spoil it for anyone, but it looks like this may be the last installment of the game. By the way the game ends, I'm not sure. I'm sure they could find a way if they want to make a Resistance 4 that they can continue it, but it really does seem to have an ending that wraps up things nicely, and it probably will be the last installment in the series, okay? So let's talk about the game, the single-player campaign, first of all. The graphics, just like Resistance 2, remember, I didn't play Resistance 1, so I can't really talk about that, but just like Resistance 2, outstanding graphics. I mean, the level of detail that goes into these character models of the Chimera, the bosses, even the humans, is amazing. The atmospheric effects, there's a snowstorm, and it looks like you're in a real snowstorm. At nighttime, or you're in the sewers, or if you're in the prison, everything is very highly detailed, very interesting. Really makes good use of the PlayStation 3 graphical engine, and I have to give them props for once again putting out a really nice presentation to their game, okay? The gameplay is kind of interesting this time around because they've kind of pulled back from where they went with Resistance 2 and went back to a couple of the original things from Resistance 1. And what I'm talking about is there is now a weapon wheel, meaning you can now hold all of the weapons in the game at once. By holding down triangle, you can select which one you want to play with. And from what people have been saying, that was the same way in Resistance 1, and actually, for more traditional FPS games, for example, Duke Nukem, Doom, all those games that used to be out for PC, that's how it used to be. Once you collect a weapon, you keep it for the rest of the game. So, it's a little bit more of a throwback to the classical FPS gameplay that you can select from all of the weapons at once. How the hell Joe is carrying all those weapons at once without breaking his fucking back and where he's putting them, I have no idea, but they went back to that style of gameplay. Another major change is they've gone back from the self-healing, regenerating life bar from like the Call of Duty and the Halo series, and now they've gone to the traditional style. You have a health meter, and once you get hurt, you don't regenerate health. You have to find health power-ups throughout the game. I will talk a little bit more about that later on, but that is a major change for the game, and it really does change the gameplay of the game from Resistance 2, okay? So, you're going to get your standard FPS fare here. You're going to find weapons, and every weapon has a secondary fire, which is nice to have 2 different abilities for each weapon. As you kill more enemies with these weapons, the weapons will level up and actually become stronger. So, for example, the shotgun starts out as a normal shotgun, but later on, as it levels up, it becomes incendiary rounds, and so the enemies set on fire and they have damage over time, so you don't have to continuously shoot them. You can shoot them once and they're going to die by themselves because they're on fire. There's also different projectile weapons. You've got your standard grenade, you've got your Molotov cocktail that does damage over time because of the fire, you've got an EMP grenade that will disable shields, and then you've got a hedgehog, which is a landmine that actually sits in place, but when someone gets near it, jumps out and hits spikes into your enemies, okay? Your enemy types, again, like the previous Resistance games, are going to be very similar. You've got your standard Chimera foot soldiers. You've got your slightly tougher soldiers that have the auger gun. If you remember, the auger gun is one of the unique games of this whole series, where not only can you put up a force field in front of you, but you can see through objects, and you can shoot the auger gun through objects through cover. So it's pretty unique in that respect. You've got your slightly tougher guys. I think they're called Reapers or Reavers or whatever, and those guys have a stronger like close-range weapon, and they have a lot of health. Then you're going to have your mini-bosses. So you got your giant guy who has levels of armor on him, and you have to destroy the armor on different levels of him, but until finally he's weakened enough where you can shoot him and kill him. And of course your little mini-enemies like your bugs and things that jump on you. And then your standard infected humans, hybrids, who I think they're called, not creepers. I forgive me because I don't remember the terminology, and if the instruction booklet had the fucking terminology in it, I would know it. But, you know, the guys that are being converted humans into aliens, and those are just standard melee type enemies that go down with only a couple shots. So, all in all, you've got a pretty interesting variety of enemies, pretty much, you know, going along with the same enemies that have been in Resistance all along, which is good. There's a couple really nice boss battles in the game. One boss battle actually happens twice, and so by the second time you've got better weapons and it's a lot easier. But there's also, you know, some unique enemies and bosses in the game, and it's pretty good. I have to say, the gameplay of the game overall is pretty good for most of the time, and I'm going to explain to you what I don't like about the single-player campaign up next. But I really like the graphics. The voice work is done really well. The story is okay. It's your standard action game story. It's not anything that's gripping or compelling. There are no real twists or turns besides, like I said, that one side bar of the game where you end up being held hostage in a prison and you have to break out. But outside of that, nothing really too complex here. It's just get your ass to New York and blow up the wormhole from Resistance 2. And that's it. That's pretty much the whole plot of the game, okay? So, that being said, I mean, I like the gameplay, the story's okay, I really like the graphics. What didn't I like about the campaign of this game? Oh, one other thing I did like about the campaign, before I get to the things I didn't like, the length. The length of the campaign is very good. The length is anywhere between, depending on how good you are at the game, you could probably beat this game around 5 hours if you're really good at it. For me, it was a little bit, it took me maybe around 6 to 7 hours, so it's a decently sized campaign. A little bit longer than maybe your standard FPS campaign, not too much more, but the length of the game feels right. When you beat the game, you're like, that felt like a pretty good package right there. If it had gone any longer, it might have felt like it dragged on too long. So it's a really good length, okay? So what didn't I like about the campaign? Two things, really, that I didn't like about the campaign. The first thing I didn't like is that there are parts in this game where you will die repeatedly until you figure out the effective way to get past it. And not to say that that's a bad thing per se, but it is a little bit annoying when, okay, you're doing fine, and all of a sudden there's enemies coming from the right, there's enemies coming from the left, there's snipers up here, there's snipers up there, and you're like, how the fuck am I possibly supposed to survive this? Now, this ties in with my second thing I didn't like about the game. I really didn't like the fact that they reverted back to a health bar that doesn't regenerate, and here's why. It's hard in this game to find health a lot of the time, and a lot of the time the health is hard to see because it's just little niblets. I don't even know what they were. Containers, flasks, I don't know, of some green yellow shit, and never explained what it is, but when you pick it up, it's health. And you would never have known that unless you just stumble upon it, which is what happened to me. I said, oh, that's health. My health went up when I grabbed that thing. So it's kind of hard if you're in a firefight like that. Let's say you're walking into that firefight with only half health. Now you're trying to figure out, gee, what should I do? Do I attack the ground guys? Do I try to take out the snipers? Or is this a part of the game where I'm supposed to go find cover and maybe have them come in a choke point? And if you're trying to figure it out, you realize you have no health. Next thing you know, you get sniped twice and you're dead. And you're like, well, if this weren't like that, what could have happened is I could have gotten sniped once, hid in a corner for 10 to 15 seconds until my health regenerated, and then I could have stepped out and tried to reassess the situation and see what I can do here. But the game doesn't allow you to do that because you don't regenerate your health. And I think a lot of the times, I'd say in the last act of this game, the last quarter of this game, when it tries to pump up the difficulty, it can get really frustrating for someone, especially someone who's used to regenerating health in this style of game, because you're like, damn, I'm dying and I'm dying and I'm dying, and I just want to figure out how to beat this part. I don't want to die repeatedly and have to keep using trial and error. If I had regenerating health, I wouldn't have to die, and keep having to going back to checkpoints. And it is a little bit annoying because some of the checkpoints in the game, as is pretty standard for most games these days, aren't exactly the best. They might take you back 3 minutes before you killed 30 enemies. You're like, fuck, now I gotta do all that over again and try to, you know, figure out what I'm supposed to do here. And there are some weird things that happen in this game. Like, there are some parts, if you find too hard, you can literally just run right past them, and as long as you get to the next doorway or the next checkpoint, you pass it. You don't have to ever shoot at some of the enemies in this game, which is kind of weird. The AI can range from absolutely cruel, meaning snipers that see you and shoot you almost instantly and you're completely fucked, or snipers that come up behind you and you never even see them and kill you almost instantly. And it ranges from that to just completely stupid. Like, sometimes the enemy will... I remember near the end of the game, there was a really tough room, one of the last rooms in the game, and I realized if I just ran around the room, the enemies couldn't kill me. If I actually tried to fight the enemies, they killed me. So I was like, fuck it, I'll just keep running around. And that's what I did, and that's how I beat that part of the game. So the AI is really hit or miss. Sometimes it's really smart and intelligent, and it makes you feel like the game's hard, but sometimes it's actually intelligent just enough that it makes the game feel good. And then there's sometimes when it just makes the game feel shitty because you can just fucking dodge everything, and it's really silly how much that happens. So if you really want my opinion of the campaign of this game, it's good, but it's not great. It's okay. It's about on par with Resistance 2. If you really want my honest opinion, I actually liked the campaign of Resistance 2 better than Resistance 3, simply because there were one or two larger scale boss fights. For example, that boss fight against the gigantic Chimera in the middle of the city, that humongous King or Godzilla-sized one, I really liked that. I thought that was fucking neat. And there's really nothing on that scale in this game. So really, it wasn't. I felt, okay, it's good. They're going through the motions again. They're hitting the right points for a good action game, a good FPS, but they're not really doing anything new. And that's really what I think the problem is with Resistance 3. It doesn't really do anything new for this series at all, or for the genre. It really is just kind of standard fare for what you're used to for this kind of thing, okay? So the campaign is okay. It's definitely worth a playthrough, especially since, like I said, it's 6 to 7 hours long for most people. But what you want to know is this game worth buying? And if you really want to know the answer to that, well, you need to know about the multiplayer. And unfortunately, the multiplayer, I have to say, it kind of sucks. It's very bland, very much the same as a lot of other FPS games. You're going to have your standard game modes. Deathmatch, free-for-all, team deathmatch, capture the flag, kind of like a territories where you have to capture certain areas of the map. They're all here, and it's all the same. There's nothing new. There are no original game modes in this game that you have not played in another game before. And if you play the standard matches, you're going to have a pretty decent experience. You know, free-for-all can be insane because every time you kill someone, it seems like someone instantly kills you from behind, and so it's just a clusterfuck. Team deathmatch is standard team deathmatch. I mean, I don't know what else to say. It's pretty bland. How does the game play? Well, it's an FPS, and you start with a loadout, so you can customize your weapon, your projectile that you throw. And you can also customize your abilities. You get 2 abilities. So, for example, you can have a shield that maybe absorbs damage, or you can have a clone that stands next to you, so people are confused. They don't know which one is the real you, and they might shoot the wrong one. But again, this is stuff that's already been done in many other games, including Halo, so it's nothing original at all here. It's pretty much standard fare for FPS. I did have some fun playing it online, but I was frustrated when all of a sudden, after playing it for a couple hours, the matchmaking went to shit. Like, I actually joined a match, I'm not kidding you, a capture the flag match. The game teamed me up 7 against 1. I had 7 people on the opposite team, and I was by myself. That's the amazing matchmaking of this game. And in addition to that, they forgot to put the option to switch teams. So if you're playing a game like that, I actually was playing a game where it was 7 against 4 in Capture the Flag, and I said, oh, I'm on a team of 7. Let me switch teams. That way it'll be 6 against 5. It'll be almost even. There's no option to do that. You can't switch teams in an FPS game in 2011. They haven't figured out that you should be able to switch teams if you want. Apparently they were so confident in how good their matchmaking was, they didn't feel that they had to put that fucking ability into the game. What a bunch of assholes. Like, how cocky can you be? That's absolutely ridiculous. So yeah, the matchmaking, I'm sorry, not the matchmaking, the multiplayer of this game, unfortunately, isn't very good. The one major complaint that I really have about the multiplayer, whenever something happens, so for example, you shoot a guy and you kill him, all of a sudden you'll be dead. You're like, what happened? And then it'll show you, oh, here's what happened. Sometimes, so much is going on at once on the screen, you can't tell what's happening. There's explosions here, explosions there, and the frames per second of the game go down to like a slideshow. So you see an explosion, and then you're dead. And you don't know if someone threw a grenade, you can't see anything. It's horrible. When the action gets so intense online with this game, the frames per second go through the toilet, and you can't tell what's going on, you can't properly control your guy, and you're going to die. So, for again, a game in 2011, they should know that if the graphics can't be handled at the settings that they've set the game, they should have lowered the detail of the graphics. They really should have. They should have said, okay, we see the frame rate goes to shit whenever there's a big firefight. Let's, fix that. Let's reduce the amount of detail, or the amount of shaders, or the shadows, or whatever they had to do to make it run at a decent frames per second during a fight. They chose not to do that. They just said, push our graphics engine to the max, and just let people fucking play it in shitty low frames per second, and let them fucking figure it out. And that's pathetic. That's absolutely pathetic. So the matchmaking, I can't really say it's any better than an average FPS. It's okay. The FPS, the frames per second suck during a firefight, but there's nothing new, nothing original, and honestly, it's not even worth buying for that reason. Like, this game, I would say this. I would recommend this as a rental for the campaign only. The campaign is fun, and it's worth playing through at least once. But that's pretty much it. The multiplayer is boring and repetitive, and after playing it for a couple hours, you're going to be bored, and you're not going to want to play it anymore, because you're going to say, I've played this 20 times before in other games, there's nothing really original here, and you're going to get frustrated with the matchmaking and with the frames per second when you get into a big firefight. I would say, hey, just rent it and then try the online, the multiplayer, because it's an added bonus. But guess what? Sony decided there would be an online pass to play this game online. So just like Assassin's Creed, just like Call of Duty, just like all these games now that are having these online passes that you need to add in to play the multiplayer, even Resistance 3 is now guilty, and Sony is guilty of doing it. And so you can't play the multiplayer of this game without the code, which means if you rent it, you can't play online. And I'll tell you right now, it's not worth it to pay the $10 or however much it is to unlock the online play if you rent this game. The game is not that good. The online play is not worth spending that much money. So, Resistance 3, to be honest, I'm a little disappointed. I thought that maybe they were going to, for a game that's possibly the end of the series and the trilogy, that they were going to go all out and really do some original things, and there really wasn't much original here. They made some really odd choices, such as having the health bar that you need to find power-ups to fill up again, rather than a regenerating health, which I feel is a step backwards for the series. And the online place kind of sucks. It's boring. It's generic, repetitive. The FPS sucks, and the matchmaking sucks. So it's hard. It sucks. I really thought this was going to be a better game. And all things considered, the campaign is a must-play if you have a PlayStation 3. The online is definitely skipped. There's no reason to fucking play it, and there's definitely no reason to pay any additional money. I can't recommend this game any more than a rental. Just rent it, play the campaign, and bring it right back, or send it back to Netflix or GameFly or whoever it is that you got it from. This game isn't worth $60. The one other thing I do want to say is I opted out of playing this game with the PS Move controls because after attempting Killzone 3 and SOCOM 4 with them and seeing how badly those games control with the Move, I said, fuck that, I'm not going to put myself through that torture again. I'm going to play with my PlayStation DualShock pad, and I never had a problem with the controls of the game. So, once again, I have to reiterate, there's no reason to have motion controls for these games. Sony is just trying to sell the PS Move because no one bought it, and there's no reason to get it. I feel bad for people who bought the Doomsday edition of this game, which comes with the PS Move controls and the sharpshooter, because you probably hindered yourself from getting a good experience out of this game, and it's completely unnecessary and derivative and not needed. So, my score for Resistance 3, I have to factor in a couple things. The fact that the campaign's pretty decent. It's definitely better than the average FPS campaign. I mean, just for example, I just played fucking shitty-ass Body Count. That game was balls. It's probably about 10 times better than the campaign of Body Count. And it is actually a better campaign, I'd say, than some of the Halo games I played recently. I liked it better than Halo ODST and Halo Reach. I actually did enjoy the campaign more than those games. So, that being considered, I also have to factor in the fact that the online play is absolutely generic, boring, horrible, and not even worth fucking playing. And, because of those factors, remember, my scale is on 1 to 10, and mine is a very strict scale. My scores mean it. If it's above a 5, it's an above average game. If it's like a 7 or an 8, it's pretty good. If it's a 9 to 10, it's outstanding and it's a must-get. If it's under 5, it's probably shit, okay? I have to give Resistance 3 a 6.5, being completely honest. It's just not a buyable game. There's no reason for anyone to spend $60 on this. You can easily spend the $5 to $10 to rent it, play through the campaign once, enjoy the campaign, and enjoy the end of the story of the trilogy of Resistance 3, and then just skip the online play, because there's no reason to play it. It's just not worth it. So, Resistance 3, a little disappointing for me. I thought, especially being an IP unique to the PlayStation 3, that they would have went out with a bang, they would have really put a lot of effort. Unfortunately, it does fizzle out a little bit, especially when it comes to the online play. It gets a 6.5. Okay? So that's it for this episode of The Hateful Truth. I hope you found it helpful as always and informative. And I will see you guys next time for another game review. Thanks.